Did you hear that? Recording in progress. So Dear One left the continuum quite a long time ago. Dear One was, what would you call him? A teacher, one of my teachers anyway, very prevalent for quite an extended period. And we used to refer to each other as Dear One. So at the meditation center, the healing center that I was attending at the time, everyone would just say, yes, Dear One, because it was more generic to the Christ identity rather than Mr. or Mrs. and all of those sort of things. So it was a kind of a funny time, but we would also use the term Dear One if you were a bit of a dill. So a bit of a slow learner. Be, come on, Dear One, get it together and things like that. And I used to get called Dear One a lot by my AA sponsor, Willem. And I know he always said it tongue in cheek. And I grew to love him that way. So when we call each other Dear One, it's a term of endearment and also like a kick up the pants at the same time. And if you've never had a good kick up the pants, that's what I want these meetings to be about. Otherwise, there's no point, right? There's no point. It's like I'm here to activate myself. I'm here to share that with you guys. And let's make the most possible out of whatever this moment contains, because we're being given everything. And here it is. So Tina and I the other night were just having a chit chat when we were trying to work out this group and how to sort me out with understanding what Zoom's about. And I said, well, the whole course is a journey into fear. It's a series of ongoing confrontations with fear, which shows up as a tiny little thing or a great big thing. It doesn't really matter. It's individual and everything like that. And she mentioned to me that she had a possum that she was terrified of that used to come and visit her, and a rat that she would see every time she went to the market. And then she kept talking as if that was really nothing. And I pulled her up and I said, wait a minute, you've just missed the whole thing, because there's a repetitive thing going on there. Every time you go to the market, you're scared by the rat. So in the idea that absolutely everything has to be included in the healing of my mind, anything that activates me, triggers me, pushes my buttons, whatever, is a useful subject for the application of whatever lesson or whatever principle that you're trying to look at and integrate within yourself. So the rat is actually your greatest teacher. So thanks God for the rat. The rat's giving me an opportunity to look at fear in my own mind. And why wouldn't it look like a rat? Rats have a long history of, the plague and being used in torture and all sorts of stuff. And we're conditioned to believe that rats, in some sort of a sense, are not healthy and they're bad and we don't want rats. That one single rat that keeps jumping out at you every time you go to the market has the potential within it to bring up a plethora of associative kind of ideas and meanings that down through the ages, consciousness has us allocated to the idea of the rat. So you might see it as one tiny little rat. I see it as this whole extended kind of story that involves rats in general, which is a section. It's a cycle for me individually, but it's a section of mind that is using the idea of rat to deny God, because there is no rat. Okay? There's just an idea that I'm projecting out onto something that I actually don't really know even what it is. Somebody once called it a rat, and I've called it a rat because I didn't know any better anyway. Get it? So there's me in my own mind looking at the rat, and I'm saying, that's terrifying, that's terrible, that rat always gets me, whatever, and I've got my own personal individual story that I'm fully aware of, but that's the tip of the iceberg. So when I'm offering my story of, let's say, the rat to the Holy Spirit, right, I get home and I've got my shopping and I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to look at this rat idea. I'm sick and tired of being scared by the rat. And every time I see the rat, I have the same response. So I put down my shopping and I go within for a minute and I ask the Holy Spirit to heal me of my fear of the rat, right? Which may or may not be commensurate with what I think my emotional package associated with the rat is. Sometimes I can have the rat and it seems like, oh, it's just a little, I'm not really that scared of it, but it's just the tip of an iceberg. So in any relationship that I have with a rat, with a person, with a workplace encounter, whatever it is, the potential contained within that one relationship, that one situation is always going to be greater than the sum of the parts that I'm aware of. Because I can't have an association with something unless it's already shared. And if it's already shared in my own formulation, then I'm only ever aware of a part of the dilemma, a part of the problem, a part of the issue. But it's enough because the Holy Spirit makes up for the other part. And so I bring my alpha and omega together. I bring the cause and effect of the entirety of that relationship together, and I'll be still, and I allow the rat to come up in me as an emotional package. I'm going to be still. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to feel this. I'm going to allow that fear to be manifest in me for a second, not because I want to validate it, but because I'm ready to heal me of it. And then I'm going to just breathe and invite the Holy Spirit to take it, right? Whenever you do that, right? So one of the things that I find is I've been to a lot of course groups and a lot of people like to talk about healing, talk about letting things go. But whenever you truly let something go, you know it. And it always has some kind of emotional release, whether you laugh, cry, vomit, cough. It can look like anything, right? But you'll feel it. And you feel it coming up as that sense of anxiety or that sense of that inner dread. And the response of the ego is, of course, the first time the response of the ego is to want to adjust to that dread, to want to adjust to that anxiety. And so rather than be still and allow the completion of that release, it's like, oh, I feel anxiety. I'm feeling awkward. I'm feeling whatever here. I'm going to go and put the kettle on, or I'm going to have a beer, or I'm going to have a cigarette or something. And it's a case of adjusting all the time, right? So I adjust. And even though I'm telling myself I actually want the healing of all my ideas about that rat because I'm sick and tired of jumping out of my skin every time I see it, I'm actually not really wanting the healing. Right? I'm not really willing to trust the Holy Spirit wholly. And that's where the whole crux is. I'm not willing. All right. Now, I know in the course it says just a little willingness. And it's like, well, if I have just a little willingness when I first start reading the course and I tell myself, oh, yeah, I've got a little bit of willingness, that was like 365 lessons ago, okay, in my own mind. That little bit of willingness has to be current, has to be active. It has to be my natural state of mind 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day, so that no matter where I'm at, and, you know, it's easy to walk around defended because, oh, I've done the course, I'm okay, I've got my salvation and all of this. It doesn't matter if you're still triggered by even so much as a little rat. There's still work to do. It's easy to forgive a human being, you know, because the human being's just going to keep coming back and being annoying as often as it needs to until you're finally willing to learn the lesson. But a simple thing like a rat or a possum, you can fob that off. It's very easy to fob those things off and go, oh, it's just a possum. What am I scared of? Oh, it's just a shadow on the wall. You know, whereas people, they're like, I have to forgive this because I've got to work with this person, or this is my mother or my father or my whatever. And so it's very obvious. So, but the little things, you know, it's the little tiny things as well. It's like the tip of the iceberg is that I'm freaked out by a rat, and the potential contained in the healing component of that whole situation expands to every other association of rats, including the association I have with whoever it is, let's say, because we're talking in separation here, whoever it is that I originally shared or borrowed the idea of the meaning of the rat from, right? Because separation has to be shared before it can form the basis of the world, I believe. That person then also, that association also is entitled to the same miracle that I have, wherever they are, they may be passed on, whatever, but it's automatically transferred, right? Healing is always automatically shared. I don't have to be concerned about running around finding that other person that I had this incredible rat story with and telling them, hey, look, I've decided to drop that story. I'm healed of it now. It automatically occurs. And if you were to find that person and tell them the story about the rat, they probably wouldn't remember because it's already been healed in my own mind or in your mind. So the miracle is not limited by my inability to perceive it. And in fact, my inability to perceive it is actually guaranteed that I'm in the availability of it and able to participate in the receival and the extension of the miracle, which we call the holy instant, or whatever you want to call it. I want to invite you then in this group to, and you don't have to, I mean, if you feel uncomfortable in a group setting or whatever, I want to invite you then in this group to look at whatever it is, because the whole purpose of the course is the application of it. And he's having a laugh. You know, if I'm not applying it, then boom, I'm not going to get the result of applying it, which is going to be the peace of my mind. Love you, Annie. So I don't want to do a round robin here, but I love that. I love the idea that I'm not separate from what it is that I seem to be afraid of. Okay, because the whole premise of the course is that there is no world, and I'm not separate from anything. So I'm not separate from your story of the rat. I'm not separate from John's story of whatever, and Annie's story or Anna's story. Like, all of these things are ideas in my own mind. Okay, so when you're using the course and when you're applying these lessons, one of the things you'll find is that you tend to want to spiritualize things and pretend it doesn't matter because there is no world. The rat doesn't matter because there is no world. There is no rat, right? That doesn't mean you think there is no rat. That just means you read it in a book somewhere and you want to try to convince yourself you don't have to do the actual work because Jesus said there is no rat. Oh, but it says in here, I need do nothing. That's true. You need do nothing. Simply surrender it to the Holy Spirit, be still and allow the healing to happen, which is actually doing nothing because your thoughts about whatever you're thinking you're doing aren't real thoughts. Therefore, they're nothing. You are already doing nothing in the belief that you think something's going on, and you allow for the miracle to occur. So when he says, oh, you need do nothing, that nothing is literally the surrender or the relinquishment of what you think doing is, and allowing the doing of the Holy Spirit to transpire through you for the purpose of healing, which we're joining here today for. So the rat becomes a very useful catalyst. The rat is my relationship with God. I'm afraid of my relationship with God. That's what it's saying, right? So that everything out there, regardless whether it's a rat, a person, whatever I react to, it's a symbolic representation of my relationship with the divine, which is within myself and naturally, by extension, everything I see outside of myself. Unless I'm not honest in my choice for salvation, in my decision for salvation, and I'm trying to keep just a little bit of my world that I think I like aside so that I don't have to look at it under the annex of salvation and surrender that also. I remember for my own story, I don't know why you can, I've never worked this out, but I have a thing with coconut trees. And down the road from me, when we first bought this house, down the road, there's a whole beachfront where the coconut trees have just naturally grown along the edge there. And I used to feel so peaceful going down there, and the trees the leaves would be blowing in the wind and everything. And it was kind of like, people say, oh, I've got this happy place I go to and I meditate and I do whatever there. And it was kind of like one of those sort of places. And now when I go down there, because I've realized that I'm using that place as an escape from how I feel when I'm not there. Now when I go down there, that whole coconut thing, I don't even see the trees. It's like I don't even notice them. They're still there, obviously, but I don't look at them and think how wonderful it all is, and I feel like I'm on some kind of tropical island and all of that. It's kind of done. And there's no loss in that. I can still appreciate the natural environment and everything else, but I'm not using that place, that situation, that relationship as something wherein I feel better in that one than in another one, because my mind is in the constancy of dividing up places and locations and relationships and friends and family and all of these things into these little pigeonholes that I give a meaning to. And some of them I think are better than others. Some of them I want to hang out in more than others. And they're just ideas or other associations that keep me from actually realizing what I'm doing by doing that, which is putting myself through hell. So the rat or the palm tree or whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right? So the goal of the course is inner peace. It doesn't matter whether it makes me feel terrible about something, whatever the situation is, or awesome about something. It's taking me out of my inner peace. So the goal of the course is to bring your mind to a state of perfect peace. So in that oneness, in that sense of self that we discover in our meditative efforts, the past and the future are gone. There's no preferences. There's no nothing there. My thoughts aren't disturbing me. And I can just enter into that moment, which Annie's sharing with me there. And Tina, come on, ready? And join in the happiness of realizing actually the power of my own mind in communion with everyone and everything. But I often find that people who've been doing the course, it takes them a moment. It takes them like at least the first 6 months of doing the workbook and with diligence and all of that sort of stuff and discipline before their mind has this kind of flip. And it was the same for me. I mean, I got to lesson 12. I had my revelation and everything first and then was given the course. And it wasn't until lesson 12 that something flipped in my consciousness and I realized that I was different, completely different to the person that was doing lesson 11 the day before. And I can't explain how that happened other than that it was a miracle. It's like I went to bed feeling like I was completely hemmed in with my thoughts and when will my mind just shut up? And the next morning I awoke and I was like a tiny white bird in a vast blue sky. There was nothing in my mind. And it took quite a bit, actually. There was a whole upset there going on. It took quite a bit to be okay with that because I was not used to a perfectly peaceful mind. And then over the period of like 3 or 4 days, my mind chatter started back in again. But it showed me what was possible through prayer and meditation and everything else. That experience showed me what was possible through the use of the lessons and the application of the lessons. And I wanted that more than anything because all I ever wanted in life was peace. I never understood why people didn't like each other, why there had to be conflict and all this crap. And you ask any small child, they'll tell you exactly the same thing. Why do people hate each other? Why can't we all play in the sandpit together? You know, it's like kids have got it all worked out. So they're our best teachers, really. But we've got to go through what we go through because otherwise, what's the point? Seriously, what's the point? So allowing yourself to go through whatever you go through rather than trying to adjust to it and adjust to it and adjust to it. And if you watch your thinking, if you watch your mind, you'll realize that the mind makes like 100 solutions an hour, maybe more, I don't know, but whatever it is, to cope with things that it think might happen in the future or to deal with situations from the past in case they come into contact again. That's all it does. It's just this chatterbox of things going on, of looking at ideas contained within the potential of the human association. And it's not until you realize that all of a sudden, I'm done with the potential contained within the human association. I have no fucking use for it at all, pardon the French, right? Including pardon the French. I have no use for that at all. I'm just going to let all of it go and let something else happen that is not of my own thinking. Okay, it's like I'm going to wipe that board clean and I'm not going to write anything on there for a second. I'm just going to leave it blank and see what happens. Right? That's what happens when you enter into those rat moments or those palm tree moments. I don't know how to not react to a rat. And probably now, Tina, that we're talking about this, the next time you go, there's probably going to be like 2 rats or something, you know, like you'll be more aware of it. So you'll be manifesting more fear and more anxiety around whatever, and whether you can actually now allow yourself to step into that moment of healing. Right? Am I going to be honest about that moment of healing? And these are the sorts of thoughts your mind will just project out. It's like, hang on, I don't want any of those thoughts. I don't want not even a one of them. When I see the rat, I see the rat. That's it. But until that moment comes, I don't want to be thinking about it now in anticipation of whether I'm going to actually be honest about wanting to be healed of my reaction to it in the future. It's kind of funny. So we're brought back to the here and the now. We're brought back to the here and the now, the here and the now, the here and the now, but not without that we do the work. Okay. It's one thing to walk around and say, oh, there is no world. Be here now, dear one, and all of this sort of stuff. But you've got to do the work. And the work looks like forgiveness. The work looks like taking responsibility, taking responsibility for my thoughts about whatever I think might be going on for me, recognizing that it's an illusion, but also recognizing that just because Jesus tells me it's an illusion doesn't mean that I actually believe it's an illusion. It seems pretty damn real. And Jesus left the planet 2,000 years ago. What the hell does he know? How dare he tell me that there is no world and it's just an illusion? He's already gone. What an asshole. Leaves me this book. But he also left me all of you guys. Mighty companions. We have each other, and that's the whole purpose this Zoom room has. Actually, it's the whole purpose anything has, but in this particular instance. One of the things too that, like, it's individual, right? So it's a self-study course. You make your own way through it. And I've had people tell me how they're doing this course from the sun sets in the east to the sun sets in the west. And you can't argue. You can't tell person that, no, they're wrong. The sun doesn't set in the east. It rises in the east. But when it comes to the course, I've had people tell me everything about it, how to study it and how not to study it and what it's used for and whatever. I can only give you my take on it. But it's you who's got to decide for yourselves, like, what am I going to use this course for? How am I going to actually get into it and make it active in me? Because you have to activate yourself. I can't do that for you. You've got to decide, and it's all about that decision. You've got to decide, yep, I'm done with the world. So when Jesus passes you by on the road to Galilee and says, give up the world and follow me, you just say yes. Not let me think about that. What do you mean, give up the world? What does give up the world look like, Jesus? No, it means give up the world. And you have to think for a second, like, I have a lot of friends on my Facebook page, and some people never actually openly comment on my posts and things, but they'll see something and they'll write to me like incognito in my message box, and they'll ask me stuff. And I have this Buddhist friend, like, she wears the habit and the whole thing, but she never actually openly comments on my post, but she always sends me a little thing going, I really enjoyed that, or I don't understand that. And she's from Tibet, very simple English. But it doesn't matter what perspective you're attempting to understand things from, you've got this in you already. It's only that ego mind trying to understand, how do I do this lesson? What does he mean by that? Let me just go back and reread that chapter. It's only the ego trying to work that out. This is not a course in becoming proficient at, and I'm speaking from my own experience, okay? So I'm not telling you guys what to think. I'm telling you where it's at for me. This is not a course in learning the concept so down pat that that's as far as I get with it. Because there's no point in replacing my human dualistic thought system with a spiritual one. The purpose of the course is to get me beyond all of that entirely. Okay? I need to have an experience to do that. The experience comes when I'm willing to let go of the world, to give up the world, even if it looks like just being willing to give up my definitions about a rat or a palm tree. Because that is the whole world. Seen rightly, that one moment, that one opportunity, if I'm honest, I'm not looking at a rat, I'm looking at fear, and I'm making a choice to let it go. That fear is all fear. That one rat is all rats, all whatever it is that's catalyzed that's going to bring me to a point of going, ooh, fear, and responding that way, reacting that way. So it doesn't matter where you come at the course from. It gets right down to that nitty-gritty of being able to see that I'm actually only ever making that same choice in every moment until finally I make it and actually mean it. So until I say it and I actually mean it, Jesus is saying to me, give up the world and follow me. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, but there's this rat, there's this whole thing going on with this rat. I've just got to deal with that. And then I'll follow you, dear one. or there's a palm tree, or there's a whatever it is for you guys in your own thing. I can't tell you how to do that. You have to be willing to apply the lesson as you understand it. But it revolves around being still. Be still and know that I am God. Having done that for a brief moment in my own mind and experienced the union with the divine, I can guarantee you that that's in you also, because when I went into the light, you guys were all there. That's the funny thing about this. We seem to be sitting here in a room, a Zoom room, 3 times now removed from what we think reality is. And it's still the same dream. And we're still not here. And I'm still not talking to myself in this Zoom room. That's going to be hard to hear and hard to take on board and hard to believe, whilst the mind is still so beset with thinking that it has to work it out, what I'm saying, in order to understand it. You don't have to work out what I'm saying in order to understand it, because all that's happening, if you're trying to do that, all that's happening is you're looking into your own meaningless thoughts to try and make sense of what you think the thoughts are that I'm giving you now. Jesus is telling you constantly, again and again, your thoughts don't mean anything. Not a damn thing. Be still and let them go. Be still and let them go. That's it. And you only have to do that for one moment wholly, which is why meditation, why prayer, and why all these other things that we do in our pursuit of the divine within ourselves. I only have to let go of my entire association, my entire conscious level for an instant, one instant, and I'm gone from here. Just an instant. That's all it takes. But the ego mind, right? This is why literally it takes a miracle. The ego mind, that part of the mind that is constantly voting for and deciding for separation, and it's always going to do that, that part of the mind always speaks first, which is why the mind training is important. And mind training is the most important thing that you can involve yourself in what we call our life on earth, our life in the cosmos. The mind training that's available through A Course in Miracles, is second to none. It comes from the mind of Jesus Christ, channeled through Helen, already ascended from this world, in charge of the atonement, head of the atonement. He says that himself. I am the head of the atonement, which I undertook to accept for myself to help you guys. So his 3 years mission on earth wasn't just it, but it took us all this time to develop from, let's say, an association of consciousness that would rather beat someone over the head with a club than apply forgiveness, to a point where we can reasonably sit back, because our minds have kind of like progressed a little, and actually take on board what's being said to us without being affronted by it, without being insulted by it. If you had gone to somebody in the Middle Ages and said, hey, dude, there's no world, they would have said blasphemy and burned you at the stake or whatever. You wouldn't have got away with it. Finally, here we are, 1965 or whenever it was, Helen started hearing Jesus, and we have laws and things that prevent us from burning people at the stake. And so finally, there's a chance for salvation to come in as it was intended. Get it? It's like it's a slow, trudging journey through consciousness. Annie.
Doug has a question. He's got his hand up, Doug.
Where's Doug? Oh, Doug up the top. Hey, Doug, go for it.
Can you talk for a moment on the occasion where one loses touch with that faith about giving yourself over to Holy Spirit? I really have been noticing some wonderful changes the past several months, and I got into this place of complete peace and openness and non-fear. And then this past week, all of a sudden, it just started to come back in a very noticeable way. And I, of course, don't like it. And I remember what you said at the beginning of this meeting, and I took that in. So there's that, and then the occasional doubt about giving yourself over to something else.
Right. Okay. So yep. In that idea that I'm giving myself to the Holy Spirit for this purpose, which is the confrontation of my fears, my anxieties, and all of those things, which are all one actual fear, like the fear of God. There's going to be like, first there is a mountain, then there's no mountain. Then there's a mountain again, then there's no mountain. Okay, so Annie was saying, just made a comment there about ring pass knots. So there's a few different things that goes on here. So one is every time you have a shift in consciousness, which generally occurs when you have a release. If you have a profound release and you have an experience, a transcendental experience, that's a shift in consciousness that is basically uncontrollable. You don't know what the hell's going to happen. It's outside of the spectrum. When you have a shift in consciousness that you can understand because you've forgiven what you think is someone else for something you think they did to you, you can tangibly understand that and you can accept it and you can put it into an application in your life whereby that person is no longer my enemy. I'm allowed to say hi to them and whatever. Okay. But in between those particular frames of reference, anything can happen. All right. And it's like, I'm in this for the ride. It's like you get on the roller coaster and you don't suddenly say, well, I love the loops, but I don't like the twists. You're on till it gets to the end. And the whole way through, all you've got is faith. That's it. So the opportunities, when you seem to lose sight of the Holy Spirit, it's always because you're looking at something else. So the Holy Spirit, or my focus on God, my focus on the divine, I try to carry it. And I remember, I think it was Ramana Maharshi or one of those guys, you know, those classic kind of thing, once said, you can't live in a singular frame of mind 24/7. It's impractical. It's improbable. You'll just do your head in and probably end up institutionalized. You apply it as it's applied, and as you come across something, you apply it again. You have a moment of healing, you feel connected, and then all of a sudden you start to lose that again. Okay, that's so you can have that moment of healing and connectedness again better next time. So I forget so that I can remember. Don't turn it into a ritual. Don't try to think back. Now, how did I get connected with the Holy Spirit last time? Because I felt so good. Allow the spontaneity and the guidance that comes from prayer, asking, I feel disconnected, whatever, to be the thing that you trust in, to feel that reconnection again next time. And it's not that there's really a next time. This is a difficult one to put into words, because when you're trying to talk about a connection with the divine, you're talking about something that occurs outside of words. At the least level, it's a feeling. At the highest level, it's direct union. So I have this feeling of being supported. I have this feeling of being nurtured. I have this feeling of feeling wonderful because I've been doing all this stuff, and we tell ourselves I've been doing all this stuff and I've been praying and meditating and whatever. I feel great. And then whoop, the rug gets pulled out from under your feet. It's like Jacob's ladder. You can't put your foot on the next rung until you're willing to take it off the one that you accomplished below. Does that make sense? You've accomplished a foot on the rung, and now, because like a river doesn't stop flowing to the sea, you got to keep going with it. You're going to put your foot on the next rung. How's that going to look? I don't know. But when you're willing to do that, an opportunity will present itself to take the next step. And you must be willing, because like you're here. You wouldn't be in this room if you weren't willing. There's a little amount of willingness that's required to even join in here. So
thank you. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much, Dave.
They're like ring pass knots. So my teacher, Ted, also a very strong teacher for me for a while, used to have this story about ring pass knots where, I don't know if you've ever seen those puzzles where you have the steel ring and you have a piece of string and it's a knot and you got to get the ring past the knot. You can't get the ring past the knot. It's not designed for you to be able to do that. It literally takes a miracle. But there's always going to be another knot. Your job is to unknot all those things so that you can, you'll realize there are no knots, but it's always accomplished the same way, miraculously. The prayer of the heart for the healing of the mind that believes it is separate from God in this situation. It's not possible for you to be separate from God ever, because God is what everything is. Therefore, how could you be outside of it? That would only be your ignorance and your arrogance and all of that sort of stuff. But in the acceptance that I am ignorant and arrogant, that's how I find myself in this world. I'm the ignorant, arrogant son of God. It's like, all right, let me own my ignorance and my arrogance for a second, in the recognition that Jesus is telling me, well, you're not really ignorant and arrogant. You're not any of that stuff, but we're just going to deal with it where you believe you're actually at. So I'm everything here. I'm the ignorant, the arrogant, the rude, the crude, the loving, the wonderful, and like the whole spectrum, the whole rainbow. But something that happens when we begin a spiritual journey, I'll call it a journey for a second, when we begin a spiritual journey, and this was certainly the case for me, I was, and this goes back to before I met Annie, actually, I was living in a kind of a alternative area within Australia where people were like hippies and spiritual people. There was some Osho sannyasins, and there was Moonies, and there was all sorts of stuff. And I loved it. I thought this was great. And I put on some beads, and I used to wear a sarong, and I'm spiritual now, you know, like I'm giving up my whole thing. But really, I was just putting on this facade, trying to escape and avoid what it was that I wanted to be spiritual instead of. So just because we've got a Course in Miracles and we've got all these wonderful things doesn't mean that I've actually, you know, it's like I was saying before, you've got to do the work. So it doesn't matter how spiritual you get or how advanced you think you are. We're always really at lesson one. Nothing I see means a damn thing. And that keeps it straight. We're all on the same page. We're all on the Titanic. We're all going down, and we all need a miracle. Anyway, any questions? That was good. I like questions. I'm always going to give you the same answer, that you need a miracle. So we're all good. Doug's good. He's going to find his knees on the carpet later on and his hands together. So while we're all here, Annie's a good resource. So for anyone in America who's, she knows people there. She knows a guy. I don't really know a guy. Well, actually a few people now, but I had someone ring me up, Annie, from Wisconsin. Not Greta, but another Dutch name, sort of Inga or something like that, who was in a hell of a state. And we did a little session over the phone, a light session over the phone. So, and it was incredible. Like, it was just as incredible as anything. So, but Annie is organising a reprint of the Sparkly book, so the Sparkly version of the Course, and she's sort of what would you call the administrator of that? Something like that. So if you want a copy of that one, the white edition is the one I'm doing through the Thetford Foundation, which was given to me to do by Jesus, I suppose. There wasn't any actual, well, there was a voice, but there was an image that I got. So, and I did a video on that. Anyone who's interested in hearing about that. So, any other questions? Anyone got anything? Come on, this is where we can be honest. This is not where we sit on the sidelines, you know. If you don't have a question, then I would encourage you to find one. If you're doing the course and you've been doing the course for 12 months and everything's smooth sailing, then I would say you're not doing the course. This is a journey into fear. We're going to tip out all the apples out of the apple cart. This is about change. You're on your honeymoon period. Yeah, look out. Yeah, the honeymoon period's a real thing. Should we talk about that? Anyone interested to hear about the honeymoon period? Oh, everybody. So the honeymoon period, when you first start reading the course, you come to it with all your lumps and bumps and your reasons for wanting to do it, which is generally, in my case, cancer and just the futility and meaninglessness of life. And for whatever your case may be, relationship breakups, they're usually pretty weak because the ego recovers quickly from those. But whatever reasons that brought you to the course, and then you start doing the course, and if you have a kind of a gel with it or an affinity with it, you just sort of know and you can't put it down, then you kind of enter into this unrecognized agreement, which we call the honeymoon period, where you're kind of cocooned in a little sphere of grace for a while, and you're reading and trying to digest as much of this incredible information as you can, and you're probably arguing with it on some pages and agreeing with it on others. And your karma, which we call the results of our choices, okay, your karma, the cause and effect relationships that propelled you into finding the course in the first place, they're kind of excluded for a moment in a certain sense. So I'll use my own example of this. When I first came to the course, I'd been diagnosed probably 2 or 3 years earlier with subdermal solar keratosis, which is just skin cancer. It's basic garden variety cancer. And it was horrific. It got worse and worse progressively, and it would come and go, and I would scratch my skin off and all this sort of stuff. And the doctors told me that I would need to start chemotherapy. But because of where I was living, I'd met all these sannyasins and other people that were all into alternative medicines, faith healing, not so much faith healing at that particular moment, but all this other way of thinking. And I'd begun to take huge leaps of faith with things in my life, like just quitting my job, walking out, and not knowing what's next. And not knowing what's next was kind of like the platform for the leap of faith mentality that I had. If I knew what was next, I wasn't happy. So when I finally found the course, that the cancer and the meaninglessness of life, if I died at the age of 32, having accomplished virtually nothing, consumed me, right? It absolutely overwhelmed me. And not to mention the thoughts in my head that were just non-stop judgmental and self-sabotaging and horrific thoughts. Like I wouldn't even want you to be able to see them if they were there today, you know, but horrific, horrible thoughts. And I fell to my knees in prayer in the dark night of my soul. And as a result of that, 3 days later, the enlightenment of my mind occurred, and I found myself in Byron Bay with a bunch of guys who were reading the course and doing stuff and whatever. And because the voice had sent me from my house, like a voice from the sky, from the ground, from my cupboard, from my own mind, everywhere, because the voice had sent me from my house over an hour and a half drive, I'd already gone past a bunch of churches to get there, to this one particular place where the course was being taught. I knew I had to be there. I just knew. And for the next probably 6 to 12 months, I entered into this kind of honeymoon period where I wasn't bothered by my cancer. I started reading the book. Everything was kind of put on hold. It was miraculous, right? It was totally miraculous. I didn't get itches. I did actually tell a lie. I did get itches, but they weren't intense. It was like, come on, keep going. And I was literally scratched the skin off my arms. But keep going, keep doing this course, keep reading. And every time I felt like I was slacking off, I would get prompted. I called it the honeymoon period, and everyone there would say, oh, you're in a honeymoon period and whatever. And I came to know it as this period where, by grace, I was relieved for a moment from all the symptomatic cause and effect nature of what it is that brought me to that moment in the first place. And then I had a shift and another shift and another shift. And finally, I felt like I was starting to stand on my own 2 feet with the course, with the idea of forgiveness and all of this stuff. And I started doing little journeys out. I took my van and a couple of guys, and we went out and we let the world press upon us where it wanted to and whatever, all this sort of stuff. So I was away from the cloistered and safe environment of the healing center, and the world could get to me, and shit started to happen. All of a sudden, I didn't have my framework, my cocoon of safety and my comfort zones. I didn't have anything. And all of a sudden, I had only the miracle. I had to apply it. I had to be like, hit the road running. And I'd realized that that honeymoon period had well and truly finished, and that it was now up to me totally to secure my salvation for myself. I'd been reading about it, watching videos about it, praying, meditating with others about it. All of a sudden, my cancer came rushing back. It got worse than ever. Everything just sort of seemed as if it was loaded up and I couldn't take it anymore. And I got to that point, until the point where one night I was sitting in the meditation room, the session room that we had there, and we were watching a video by Dear One. And I want to tell you the Dear One story. I started with that. All right. So anyway, but we were watching a video by Dear One, master teacher, right? So his name is Charles Anderson. And just to give you a little background on Charles Anderson, Charlie was sent in at the end of World War II after they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. He was a war photographer, and they sent him in to take photos of the devastation. And he fell apart on the beach. He couldn't do it. He saw the inhumanity of man against man and the destruction and everything, and it destroyed him. And from memory, I forget who told me this, but from memory of the experience he had there, he found God right there and began to teach from his experience. But in this particular night, he was doing a video about heart disease. And there was about 30 people in the room. And the room was black except for the television. We had a big screen television. All the lights were out. It was dark. And we had these really uncomfortable plastic chairs. And we're all sitting in these plastic chairs watching this video. And the old man pointed out and he said, "You there with that heart disease, all you have to do is stand up and say, I have no use for this." And I don't know what inspired me to do it. I just felt prompted. I stood up straight away in that room. I thrust my arms out in front of me, which were absolutely grieving with cancer at that moment. And I said, "I have no use for this," out loud. And all of a sudden, I felt a fire, like a heat, that you iron your clothes with the iron, as hot as that. And it went up my arms, this heat, both arms at the same time, up my arms, into my neck, and like my whole body. And that's it. I was healed, and I haven't had it since. And that was like 25 years ago. That was a miracle. But it was just simply a change of mind about the purpose that I'd given it. And whether I wanted to believe before or not that I'd chosen cancer or made it manifest in my life or not, whether I wanted to resist that idea or argue with whoever told me that idea, the fact that I healed myself of it by grace proves to me that I must have given it to myself at some point somewhere. It's holding a grievance, a judgment, whatever, and it becomes manifest in the cellular embodiment of my form, because the form is a manifestation of the mind of the idea that believes in the separation. It's not separate. It's the symbolic representation of the separation, subject to all the dictates of whatever that may be individually. So that honeymoon period then ended abruptly and everything rushed back in. When you find that you're doing the workbook lessons, because you're doing them, like if you're doing them properly, doing them at least twice a day, 3 times a day, whatever, you naturally find it easy when you're doing those lessons to stay in a kind of a framework of thinking that reflects what it is the course is about. Especially if you've got like a phone and you've got the Course in Miracles app and it sends you a chime every time you're supposed to do your lesson and all of that stuff. Yeah, Donna's nodding. So it makes it easy, and it's not so obvious when you forget, because when you finish the course or when you get to a certain point where you realize that you're kind of good with it, then the heat gets turned up. It's the only way I can sort of say it. The heat gets turned up and it's like, whoa, I've really got to apply this now. We used to have this funny thing would happen. Sometimes there'd be like 60, 70 people at the meditation center, and when you first turned up there, you would be assigned a guide for your first 12 months, someone who'd been there for a lot longer, and if you had questions, you would go to them and all that sort of thing. I ended up being guide for a few people, and I had a few guides myself. But one of the things that always happened is that you would realize, or you would think to yourself, there's nothing much happening for me here. I wish more would be happening, because when we would do our light sessions, which was like a standing meditation, you would see the guys that were really full on into it in the middle, and they'd be having these incredible monumental releases, and you'd be standing around the periphery looking at it going, how come they're having all these amazing sort of like releasing amazing moments and nothing's happening for me. Or at least that's what I would, I'm just assuming there. So you would go and see a guide and they say, well, ask, you have to ask for what's next, ask to be given more. And so when you're asked to be given more, the next thing that happens is the shit hits the fan. People and situations and things come from everywhere and your button starts getting pushed, which is actually a good thing. But sometimes it's like, whoa, too much, Jesus, too much. Just a little bit more would be good. But it's like all of a sudden there's 10 possums. So you would have these moments where asking for more and everything happened, and you're beholding then purely upon the miracle. That's all you got. So you've given up the world. What else you got? A miracle. That's it. I can't run out there and solve my own problems anymore because I've been reading this book for 12 months and it's telling me that my problems are purely of my own making and that I can only fix them with a miracle by recognizing there is no problem. It's only me seeing a situation errantly. Everything, and we're right back to the start where we came in now, but everything is that opportunity. From the rats to the palm trees to anything. Everything is that opportunity to transform my relationship with my Father, which also includes myself and everyone and everything in the world. Don't let those opportunities pass you by. Recognize them for what they are. Learn to be vigilant for your own state of inner peace and recognize when it's been disturbed by something, whether that's in a joyous way or a horrible way. Because peace is this center line here, and we don't want the downside or the upside. We just want to stay on the path of peace. And some people will say to me, oh, that'd be a bit boring. But when you recognize that you can't have the one without the other because it's yin and yang, they follow each other around like a cat and a dog. You can't have, if you're chasing after all these high, wonderful, beautiful, isn't this great kind of experiences, the rest are not far behind, which is the opposite because the world is dualistic. But when I want only love and not love on my own terms, then I will find peace, I'll find joy, I'll find happiness, and there will be no sense of loss at the idea of what it is that I think I'm being asked to give up as far as what I think I might like about the world. It's miraculous. It's miraculous. And my own state of mind is my barometer, which is why it's important to be vigilant for the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Your state of mind literally is the kingdom. Heaven on earth is your awareness of heaven on earth. Heaven on earth is me in my total focus here, that I'm one with all things and allowing myself to carry that with me to whatever degree I can manage to do that for 5 minutes, an hour, half an hour, whatever, and not forgetting that that's my purpose when I do forget. So that the situation or the incident or whatever it is that seems to distract me from being peaceful is also the one that gives me reason to come back to being peaceful. Because this is a course in remembering. And every time I remember to do that, every time I remember to bring myself back to focus, back to center, back to the kingdom, I'm training myself to be in the here and the now. The upset becomes the reminder. So when I find that my mind is upset by something, it's a kick in the pants for me to be about that reconnecting moment. That's all it is. It's Jesus going, hey, we're over here. Come over, come and lay in the long, cool grass here and by the still waters and all of that. Yeah, give me all your rats. So in the moment that you forget your purpose, like I remember when I first started doing this course and I would forget to do my lesson, like lesson number 1, nothing I see means anything. And then you would go wander off into town, have a coffee, talk to people, do whatever, and go to the library or wherever. Before you know it, a whole day's gone by and you haven't remembered to do your lesson. You haven't reminded yourself that nothing you see means anything. And you've been walking around giving everything all the meaning it has for you, oblivious to the fact that, hang on, I chose for a mind training discipline here, but I haven't been applying it. The forgetting, when you recognize you've forgotten, that's actually the reminder to remember. The conscious mind, the ego mind, would have you focus on 1,000 things a minute, 1,000 different things a minute, and have you convinced that they are actually different things. It's all the same thing. Everything outside of you, everything external is nothing more than a distraction from the kingdom which is within you. It's simple. And when you focus on the kingdom within you, when you see yourself as one with the kingdom within, then the kingdom without becomes the same thing. You see the Christ in your brothers and not the story that you attribute to the thing. The form is nothing. Apply the principle. Don't judge the form. Apply the principle. The principle is there is no world. Don't judge the form. Apply the principle. Ready? Everyone say it. Don't judge the form. Apply the principle. Because as soon as you judge the form, as soon as you make a judgment about one thing or another thing, the first step on that slippery slope to hell, and it's whoop, all the way down, and the next thing you know, how did I get down here? I was cruising along. I need to put my foot on the next rung of that ladder and get back up. And as I remember to keep doing that, it's not like that the ladder really goes up higher and higher each time. It's just that I'm either in the kingdom or I'm not. So Jacob's ladder, every time I heal something, and I'm using that term loosely because you need no healing really, but every time I release a false belief about myself, okay, and accept the perfection that's offered me by God, all I'm doing is realigning my mind with the truth within myself to the point where at some point I'm going to be able to experience that when I'm willing. And those experiences that come along, if you want to call it an out-of-body experience for a second, you can, because I don't really have a reference to be able to give it to you in as anything other than that, you know, an out-of-the-world, out-of-the-universe experience, a divine experience. Those experiences, when you start to feel like, and it's not that you'll know, but when you start to feel like there's a sense of dread and anxiety, like rising up in you, which if you're doing the course correctly, you'll get those moments of feeling like you're being sucked down the plug hole. And, you know, when you're a little child and your mum pulls the plug out and you're like, the water's going down, and you're like, holy cow, I don't want to go down there. Illogical as anything, but still you believe that you can be sucked down because that's where everything's going. So the closer you get to God, and it's not that there's a distance, but the closer your own recognition of God within you is about to dawn, you'll feel that. You'll feel this sense of total terror for a second, total anxiety. And the mind is structured, the ego mind is structured to deny that, to adjust. I'll put the kettle on. All right. It's that fear. It's the release of fear. But those experiences, it's like if you were in an Eastern association, if you were someone in India, let's say, or they have the idea of the void. So entering into the void, entering into nothingness. It's never actually nothingness because God is everything. So you're actually entering into God. You're entering into a moment of total unknown, or better, total unremembered. But the fact that you react to it and respond to it is because you do remember it. Otherwise, you wouldn't react or respond to it at all. You'd be like, oh, what's this? I'm feeling this anxiety. I've never felt this before. You wouldn't know that it was something that you should feel terrified about, or whether it was something you should feel excited about. Right. And people who go on like a roller coaster, they have that total anxiety and they're excited about it. That's the whole reason they go on the roller coaster. So they can feel that terror and that, and they enjoy it. But it's like if you flip that over, when you don't know what it is that terror is associated with, you tend to want to recoil from it. It seems to be an illogical fear, which is why people don't like having these moments of random anxiety. And I'm having an anxiety attack. I need a pill, or I need a drink, or I need a whatever. It's like, no, you don't. You just need to be still and let it happen. You're perfectly capable of dealing with it. I mean, if you're not, you're not. But I'm telling you, you're perfectly capable of dealing with it when it happens, because it's nothing more happening in you than your own enlightenment. It's trying to happen. It's calling you. It's calling you forward into the void, into that empty place, into that space between your thoughts all the time. But because you associate it with fear and recoil from it, you have to be trained through a process of mind training not to adjust to that moment of terror, to allow it to happen. And I remember I was in Byron Bay. This is it can happen. So it can happen incrementally. let's say the big happening, I don't know really how to talk about this, but the big happening, your total connection with God, your enlightenment, the illumination of your mind, that's a one-time happening. It occurs by the grace of God. You can't do anything about it. When it's time, it's time. Until then, all we're practicing is being prepared or being willing for that moment to occur. And you can have these holy instants and all these sorts of things happen spontaneously, seemingly spontaneous to you, where all of a sudden you'll be having a release of all this emotional stuff. And some people will say, oh, it's a midlife crisis, or I'm having a breakdown, or I'm having... It's like, no, you're not. You're perfectly on track. Everything's okay. Just breathe through it. Let it happen. Don't need to ring the ambulance. Just let it happen and have faith, because your enlightenment is going to happen to you whether or not you want it to or not. It's going to happen because it already has happened. All of this is back in time before that happened. I've been outside of time and I've come back into whatever this year is to tell you you're already whole and perfect. You're already in heaven, and all you got to do is let go of the world, give up your ideas about what you think you are, and enter into that moment with me here and now, and let's just get the hell out of here, right? That's all that's going on. So the course is a way for you to be able to practice that getting the hell out of here all the time. And I was in Woolworths one day down in Byron Bay doing my shopping. I was on unemployment, so I never did much shopping. I just had a few basics, potatoes, and that was about it, baked beans. I remember pushing my trolley up the aisle and I was looking at the baked beans, and there was ones with ham sauce and ones with plain sauce and ones with spaghetti sauce or whatever. And I couldn't make a decision which one I wanted, and I only had like $2 or $3. And I remember I asked Jesus something like, which one should I get, Jesus? Because I was trying to be really vigilant about every single decision I make, probably going overboard with it. Which one should I get? And all of a sudden, I just burst into tears. I don't know why. I just burst into tears. I was hanging onto my trolley. And in Byron Bay, most people, they're kind of hippie and a bit alternative. They would normally be caring and give you a hug and come over and put their hand on your back and stuff. Everybody went away. Everybody in the whole supermarket. I'm wailing. I'm just like, I couldn't stop. And it went on for like 5 minutes. And then I started laughing, hysterically laughing. I'm like laughing, like the pain that I was releasing through asking Jesus to make a decision for me. It wasn't a decision about the beans. It was a decision to choose for my salvation. Oh, my battery's dying. I've got like 10% battery. This will be the last thing here. But anyway, I'm in the supermarket and I'm having this release and everybody's like avoiding me like the plague for 2 rows around. It was funny. But I realized I had to just hold on to my trolley and let it happen. Part of me wanted to run outside because I could feel it coming on. Part of me wanted to run outside so I didn't feel like an idiot in front of all these other people doing their normal shopping and me doing my like crazy man spiritual release in the middle of Woolworths. But I realized, don't adjust. Don't adjust to that upwelling of emotionality. Don't adjust to that upwelling of anxiety. Be still wherever I am and allow it to happen. Just breathe, trust in the process, trust in God, and let it happen, because on the other side of it, there's freedom, there's a greater sense of peace, there's all that joy and beauty and wonder that Jesus talks about in the Course. But in order to avail myself of it, in order to be able to become aware of it, I've got to let go of all the other shit I'm hanging on to. You'll see it when you believe it, not the other way around. And I think we'll leave it there because I do have a flat battery. Even though I'm feeling charged, I'm down to 8%. Annie, if you have plenty of battery, can you take these guys through like some breathing and just whatever? Because I'm about to die. I will resurrect in 3 days, I promise. I'll be back. We'll roll away the stone. I'll find my battery charger and we'll be back.
Thank you, Dave. It was really, really good tonight.
Thanks, Bethleen.
Really appreciate what you shared. I got to check out, Kathy. But I want to just say thank you.
Hey, perfect. Thank you. Peace. We'll do another one, I think. I'll talk with Tina and we'll post up. You guys are all in now the Messenger group. Yeah, so we'll post it up in there. But
thank you all for being here. Much love.
Thank you, guys.
Peace and love. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye now.
Check the group chat.
I did it.
Look, guys, I'm not actually feeling like to do that. I don't know about where you're at it. Like if you just check in for a moment, but I'm not actually feeling right now to do that. I feel like it's wrapped up for now. But if there's any questions, Tina's there or Dave or me, you can contact me too. But I'm not actually feeling to do it as a group at the moment. But if anything's coming up for anyone right now, please feel free. Okay, Donna, cool.
I just want to say thank you, everybody. I've got to get going. I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you, David, and peace to everybody. Thanks again.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you for joining us, Doug, and thank you for your question too.
My pleasure. Have a great evening or day, everybody.
Go ahead, Donna.
So yeah, I was trying to wait until he finished somewhat because I had a question that brought up both by Doug's question and by what he's been saying. So I've been through the honeymoon period and I've been studying the course only for 3 years, but very dedicated student, and it has completely changed my life. Right before I came into study of this, I had been locked up in a mental institution for 6 months. And, you know, I haven't had any problems at all. And I've gone off my psychiatric meds and everything's been great. But the last 3 nights, my PTSD has really been coming back with a vengeance, but it's coming back in my dreams. So I don't know what, like, I can't, if it was happening during the day, I think I could handle it with the course and with, you know, what I've learned. But since it's coming at night, I feel totally I don't know what to do. I don't know how to find peace, how to come back to knowing that I'm one with God.
Like the rat situation, it's always some form of fear, no matter how it's manifesting, whether it's rage or grief or sadness, or it's always some form of fear or that initial separation. So sometimes in our dreams, there can be a conversion of that, like overnight. But if that's not really happening, what I would tend to do would be still for a moment and get in contact to the emotional content that is coming up in that dream. Because unless it's been converted, it will still be held in mind. And then, so it's like giving yourself that moment of space and just sitting still. And no matter whether you can only feel it like a grain of sand, you can start tracking with it and allowing it a little bit more. That grain of sand might be, you know, that much fear or whatever. And then you're sitting still and you're asking for that help. You're asking for that miracle, like Dave's suggesting, and calling on help.
Thank you. For some reason, I didn't think of that, but that makes perfect sense, of course. I dealt with it when it was like in my conscious mind, but for some reason I was thinking, since it's my unconscious, that there wasn't anything I could do.
Yeah, it's sort of, so you were conscious of it at the nighttime, and then it's almost like just pushed out of your awareness for a moment. But if you just go and look, it's still there. It has been brought to your attention. It's not really unconscious anymore. It's just in a different, like it's pushed out the back of your awareness for a second.
Right. I need to stop pushing it away and go through it.
It's almost like I've got distracted, sort of like I'm looking over here, but I actually am aware that big chunk of, you know, that rat is actually presenting itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like the image of a rat too. That will help me.
Come in, little rat. Let me have a look at you. See what you are.
Yeah.
That was great. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you for setting up the session, Tina. It was wonderful.
My joy, my honor. I mean, we all kind of made it happen.
Yeah.
Everybody was kind of wanting this to happen, right?
Yeah, so thanks, Donna, for bringing that question up, because we're all one mind and we're all here walking each other home, and we're in that condition of forgetting and remembering. So all the reminders through each other are really helpful.
Yeah.
So has anyone else got anything on their minds at all? Is anyone in touch with some fear or anything that they would like to just take this moment all together and just stand in? Any sort of upset? Otherwise, I think it's probably time to wrap it up for this session. And thank everyone for joining and being willing to show up in dedication.
Yeah, thank you guys
very much.
And thank you, Tina, for setting it up too.
Yeah. We'll check the group and we'll see when it happens again. We'll stay updated in the group chat. So love you guys.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys showing up.
Love you guys. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Oh, oh you're still here, friend. All right, I'm going to close it up.